This is Zach, live from Ashland, Oregon, doing a little car geeking out here with my colleague John Spohn from Action Auto in Minneapolis. John's having some video connectivity issues over there, but he's on the audio. And we're going to be talking about just cars and car stuff and maybe some of the funnier nuances of running an automotive shop and trying to fix a high volume of cars on a regular basis and some of the stranger things that can happen with that. And hopefully some people out there are going to eventually jump in here and maybe have some questions, and we can field some questions and provide some valuable content for some people around Ashland. I don't think anybody in Minneapolis is watching this right now. We're going to provide this content to the Minnesota region later. But yeah, so we've got a couple people joining, which is fantastic. And John, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am here. I can hear you.
Great. John owns.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. John is a friend of mine, and he owns 2 auto repair shops with some of his family members. He grew up in an auto repair shop environment, which is different than me. First of all, I guess I should say I was born in Minnesota, which makes me a car geek from Minnesota, but John actually still lives in Minnesota. And John,
Still
how old were
currently.
you? And yes, John's still currently a car geek, still currently in Minnesota. But John, how old were you when you started working in your dad's auto shop?
I think I was about 5 years old when that got going, sweeping the floors and probably hanging out more than I did anything working on cars.
Yeah.
But I pretty much grew up over there. My dad had the shop. My grandpa had a shop, and it's kind of always been in the family blood since the start.
So your grandpa actually started his shop?
Well, my grandpa had one down the road from him, and a couple of them actually. And then my great grandpa had a shop before that. So been around for quite a while.
Wow. So you're maybe a fourth generation shop owner.
Yeah, that's me. And then I'm definitely hoping they're taking some time off and relaxing.
And I should also say John has 3 boys. So there might be a 5th generation shop owner in the making.
That would be the goal. It'd definitely get me out on the golf course some more.
Yeah.
Zach, how did you get started in this?
Well, it's a weird thing. I always loved cars as a kid, but I did not take shop class in high school. I think that shop class was really frowned upon in my high school, and it was kind of where the teachers would just send the troubled kids. And even though I was probably by definition very troubled, I wasn't troubled enough to warrant being sent to the shop class. So I basically I got into Volkswagens when I was 18, and like my senior year of high school, and my Volkswagen was always breaking. And so I started to read books and buy tools to try and do small repairs. And then of course it kept breaking and breaking worse and worse. And I needed to buy more tools and do bigger repairs. And eventually, I moved to Oregon in a Volkswagen van, and I fell in love and had a baby and got married. And then I felt an incredible pressure to be able to provide for my family at the time. So I enrolled in a trade school in Grants Pass, Oregon. And that's how I got started. My actual professional career started with the trade school at Rogue Community College. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed. So that's my long story short. But yeah, when I was it's funny though, when I was a little kid, I used to hang out with my older cousins at a gas station, in Strawberry Point, Iowa. And you probably remember, we've alluded to some of the colorful art on the walls at the gas station, and probably in your dad's and grandpa's shop back in the day. There was the shops back then had some interesting artwork that we would never ever put on our shop walls in current day. But that was always pretty interesting, being a 5 or 6 year old kid hanging out in an auto shop and seeing some of that, and the weird shop mentality that you probably grew up with too. You know, it's just kind of a different world being around cars every day. What do you think about that? Well, I think John's gone. So let me see if there's any questions. I see we've got a couple of people. Kimberly says she's got no audio. But I think I'm not sure if she might need to turn up her audio. Shields, are you there? And are we making sure that there's audio coming? Oh, she says she's on now. Okay, well, John disappeared, but I'm sure he'll be back.
He's looking for his Wi-Fi password right now.
Yeah, classic shop owner doesn't know the password to his own Wi-Fi. But I'm sure we'll see him soon. So some of the interesting things about owning a shop that I can start to talk about are the strange relationships people have with their cars. And I know I talk with this a lot, and in my advertising and marketing, I kind of play on that relationship that people have with their cars. And we've really seen some oddball relationships. I know personally, I used to name my cars. Shields, you're there? Do you have a name for your car?
I don't know. It's lived up to a lot of different expectations recently. As you know, I'm living in Costa Rica right now. It's a black Toyota Prado diesel. Don't find it in the US, but an amazing car. I had a really crazy experience that driving down this amazingly steep incline the other day, steeper than the Green Springs, extremely steep, no guardrails. And from underneath the seat, when I'm going down the steepest part, I mean, I have to go up this hill in almost granny low. I can only drive up in first gear and barely make it. That's how steep I'm talking. So I'm going down the hill, and all of a sudden, this plastic water bottle rolls from underneath the seat, underneath the brake pedal. So I became a contortionist to save myself there. Then about 15 minutes later, my son was in my car with me, and we're down the hill, and I ran over a snake, Zach. And,
oh my gosh.
I only hit the back of it. So he was wiggling all around, and there were it was pitch black, some people walking down the road, and I just said, oh, I gotta finish the job. So yeah, with my son, I did a reverse move on that snake about 4 times or 5 times to finish the job, just making sure he wasn't going to kill anybody, and looked at my son and just said, okay, these are the life lessons. So as far as a name for the car, I think it's still earning it right now. But you can't you can't beat that strength and power of the diesel.
John, we see that you're back.
I am back. Sorry, I had to put a new engine in my phone real quick. We're ready to roll.
It's fast.
Yeah.
Up there, I apologize for that.
We were just talking about the strange relationships people have with their cars, and one of the ways people seem to connect with their cars is they give their cars funny names.
Oh yeah, I had a Freddy in the shop today.
A Freddy. That's really good.
2014 Subaru. We see a lot of Subarus.
Yeah, we do too. Do you have a place in your shop software where you store the name of the car?
That I do not have. That all ends up right in my head. That's probably not a bad idea, though. it's nice. I see
We've
Freddie
started-
driving down the road. Who that is.
Yeah. We've started storing that in the memo section of our customer profile. We store their vehicle's name if it has one.
Probably not a bad idea.
A lot of Volkswagens seem to have names. A lot of these vans tend to have very strange names, and some of them are German. My good friends in Minneapolis have an old 1978 Volkswagen van, and its name is Ortha.
Have not had the pleasure of meeting Ortha. I don't know if
Yeah.
I want to.
You know, my old van's name is Osma.
They sound two peas in a pod.
I named it after my neighbor in Ashland who's Austrian. Anyway, next subject. How about this, John? I hear you have a very funny story about cabin air filters. I want to hear it. For those
Yeah,
of
you know, we've been thinking a lot about.
Let me just give a preface. The cabin air filter is the filter that filters the cabin air as it comes from outside the car into the cabin area, and it's supposed to filter out pollen and allergens and dust and particulates, and a lot of people don't know it's there, and so the filter doesn't get changed very often. So tell me yeah.
It's just like a furnace filter in your house. You know, you want to keep the air clean inside the car. And I had never a better example of this other than the last time I took my family up north on a fishing trip. We're going to pick up some bait, and we drive up to the local fleet farm up in Minnesota. And my kid says something smells funny in this car. And I looked over and I immediately thought that it was him. And after I realized it wasn't him that smelled, I rolled the windows down and we kept going and got the bait, got back to the cabin. Well, the next day we went back to go get some food at the grocery store, and the smell was still there. And it was so rancid, I couldn't drive the car even with all four windows down. And so we got back to the cabin, and I tried to pull out the cabin air filter on a Chevy Suburban. And I realized that I needed about 5 different tools to access that filter. And so I drove back to town and I bought all the tools that I thought I needed, and got back and realized I was 1 tool short. So I went back to town. Then I got back into the car and I pulled out the cabin air filter, and I ended up finding a dead mouse in there that had babies. And there was 7 dead mice in the cabin air filter. And at this time it was summer and about 90 degrees out. And I'm glad that I had that filter in there to catch all that, or it would have gotten into the blower motor and it would have been a complete mess. So you never know what's inside those filters, but they're definitely worth looking at.
Yeah.
Eat the mouse again.
We've seen some very gnarly cabin air filters in our day here too, and a lot of rodents. We actually found a couple of mice in the shop today that we're pretty sure fell out of a car into the shop, and we're running around trying to figure out how to get back to their house. So yeah. Hey, real quick, technical question here. Is this you that trying to get in? Should I get rid of these Johns?
I am all of the Johns right now trying to get in. There's 3 of me right now between my phone and my computers there.
Okay.
I just left.
I'm gonna let Shields deal with a couple of those. He'll get rid of them.
You just got
So hopefully
You'll have to make me the host again, Zach, if you want me to do that.
okay, I'll just get rid of the other John here.
If he
Clearly we're better at
disappears,
fixing at Zoom meetings.
Yeah. So let me just look here because I have another question. Do you get a lot of people do you get a lot of people that like to do their own car repair and then they get into a little bit of trouble and they can't complete the job, and then they need to bring the car into the shop. And if you do, what's your philosophy with that?
I've ran into that a few times over the years, and the first few times I thought, I can fix this and I can conquer this problem. And after realizing
you can save the day.
I always like to save the day. You want to make somebody happy and get them back on the road at the end of the day. But it's the same philosophy I have with working on my house. I don't do the electricity at my house or the sheetrock work because I don't know what I'm doing. So, a lot of people are capable of fixing different things on their vehicles. And there's a lot of people that attempt to and maybe don't get the job done all the way. So I try to not get involved in those types of situations, because you never really know what you're going to run into, and you can't account for the bolts that have been loosened that maybe were never supposed to be loosened in the first place. So, I think especially with safety systems, it's probably best to leave that up to somebody that does it every day and really knows what they're doing and they're trained in it. You've got four things keeping you on the road, going 70 miles an hour down the road. I like to know that everything is done correctly and everything is tightened properly. And if somebody doesn't know what they're doing, that can put that in jeopardy.
Yeah, I agree. So tell me, when someone comes in and they say they've got their car taken apart and they need help putting it back together, you just tell them to get lost.
There's some other great shops in the area that I would always be able to refer somebody to that may be more interested in getting to a project like that. But personally, I think that it's difficult enough doing the repair job these days when you know where all the parts are and you have the manuals. But if you take out the normal procedures out of it and things have already been taken apart, that can greatly complicate the issue. And for us, I found that it's best to not work on that car.
It is so hard when you get someone who comes in and you can tell that they're in a lot of trouble. They say, they come in and they look completely distraught. You can tell that they've been working on their car for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks in their driveway, and they're just at their wits' end, and they've tried everything. And I really have to applaud people that do that, because they sure have a lot of, because I used to do that. I was the guy that would go to the Volkswagen shop and I was distraught. Like, I can't fix my car. Can you please help me? And it was in Minnesota at Derek's Auto Repair.
Remember when?
What's that?
At my shop, I remember when you came in.
It was at Derek's Auto Repair in Byron, Minnesota, and they were the leading Volkswagen experts. Their dad had them working on Volkswagens when they were 4 and 5 years old, and fortunately they taught me enough to get my car put back together. But so when people come into my shop and their car's halfway taken apart and I can tell they're all stressed out and they don't know how to put it back together, it really tugs at my heartstrings, and we want to be able to help them. But like you said, it's a huge liability, because once you start to help putting that car back together, your name is on it. And as a professional shop, you're liable, and you don't know what that person has taken apart that you're not aware of. They could have unscrewed any screw or any bolt, totally unrelated to the repair that's necessary. One time we had a guy that he drained his engine oil and he refilled all of the engine oil in the transmission. And so he overfilled the transmission by 5 quarts, but he didn't even put in transmission oil. He put engine oil in the transmission. And so for people that wonder why they don't have transmission dipsticks anymore, that might be a good reason. Because I think it was common.
Yeah, I think that does happen occasionally, and it's not anyone's fault. It's all done with good intentions. It's just a similar deal. If I had a piece of siding coming off on my house on a Saturday afternoon, my first thought is I'm going to grab the hammer and some nails, and then I'm going to go and try and fix that because I've got nothing to do that day and I want to take care of it. And the problem is that I don't know what else is in the wall. And so by the time I drive that nail through there, I found I needed 3 nails, and I put 1 through the water pipe and 2 through the electrical lines, and got much worse problems than just waiting until Monday morning for the guy that does the siding to come and help me out. So
Yeah.
I found in many aspects of life, everybody's really good at something, and I try to stick to what I'm good at, and I let them stick to what they're good at. And my life is a lot.
I like that.
Yeah, it gets the job done. So what kind of weather do you guys have out there in Ashland right now?
It's very nice. I think it's probably, let me look on my phone. I think it's about 70.
Okay. We're about the same.
Yeah.
It was snow last week and -30. So it changed. No, I'm just kidding. It changes real quick here.
Yeah, it's 75 here actually. And it's a strange, we've had a really, really, really dry spring, which is beautiful weather, but it's makes for a really awful fire season that we probably are gonna not be able to avoid coming up here really soon. So challenging times for Southern Oregon. I'm wondering, Kimberly is on here listening. Kimberly, if you have any questions about cars or car repair, you type that into the chat and ask us a question, and we'll be happy to try and answer it for you. And I see Janet is on too, and Janet can type in a question if she has one. And in the meantime, John, I was also going to ask you an interesting question. Let me look. I'm forgetting what it is now. If you were going to buy a car, okay, if you were going to buy a car on Craigslist from really far away, what is the one, if you could only get one picture of the car, what picture would you want?
So I've done that. And there's been lots of adventures driving to the middle of a cornfield to buy a car from a farmer or an auction or a dealer you've never dealt with in the past. And the one picture that I would want would be an inspection report from a certified mechanic that did a vehicle inspection. And I would like to see their opinion of the vehicle. And I can check out a picture of what a car is supposed to look like on Google, but I want to know what is the underlying structure, what is the mechanics of the car. And I would never suggest going to buy a car off of Craigslist from far away without having it inspected, because I've done that before and it doesn't work out, even for a guy that knows how to fix cars.
It doesn't end well.
Yeah.
I like
I
like that answer. That's a really good answer. I was wondering if you might want a picture of, I like to see the inside of the valve cover so that I can see if the oil's ever been changed. But your answer trumps my answer by 10, because there's nothing more valuable than an inspection done by a certified shop if you're looking at buying a used car, because it's so important.
Oh yeah, we see it all the time. And the idea of buying a car without having an inspection would be like buying a house without getting a home inspection. You know, you can see that house is nice and shiny and the faucet turns on and the sink works and the windows go up and down. But if someone doesn't get up into the attic and check the foundation of it, you could be making a huge mistake. Just like with a car, you can have the nicest looking Dodge Viper that's bright red and it'll drive 100 miles an hour down the highway, but you have no idea if the wheels are ready to fall off until somebody that knows what they're doing lifts it up and checks out the bottom side of it. And even in addition to the bottom side, checking the computers on the car. Many new cars have sometimes 30 or 40 computers on them these days. And so they talk to each other constantly, and you can find a lot of information when you know what you're looking for in scanning those computers, and definitely identify some extremely expensive problems before they turn into your problem. So you'll never look back on paying a certified mechanic, even if it's $100, $200, $300. That's definitely money well spent to have somebody thoroughly check it out.
Yeah,
I know
I
that
agree.
also experience. I've bought a handful of cars without checking them over on a gamble, just as a project, and it doesn't turn out well for anybody, including the seller of the vehicle, because everyone wants everything to be transparent.
So you I can tell you're not a house repair guy because you just said you'd want a guy to crawl up in the attic and check the foundation out.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, no, crawl up in the attic and the foundation.
That was 2 sentences. I get it. 2 sentences.
Yeah, I don't think at the house. If it's a broken light switch, I'll find the electrician that knows how to put the thing in, and I'll go back to work in the car while he does it.
Okay, so we have a question here. Janet wants to know, what's the easiest car to work on? What do you think?
The easiest car to work on is the brand new one.
Well, I agree. That's maintenance. And I'll tell this is really, really true, and I'm getting really serious right now. Maintenance is a lot easier than repair. And so maintenance on say a car comes in and it's a fairly new car, or even an older car that's always been maintained, and it comes into the repair shop for maintenance, it's much easier for a technician to perform maintenance on that car than it's going to be for a technician to perform a repair. And so how that translates to the car owner is that if you maintain your car, the probability or the odds of you having a successful car ownership experience are so much higher than if you neglect the maintenance and then you're constantly repairing things, because repairs are so much less predictable than maintenance. And so you're absolutely right. I agree with you that the newer car is the easiest car to fix. But I know that's not what Janet was asking. I think Janet might be asking what brand of car is the easiest to work on. And if that's the question, I'm going to say it's probably going to be a Toyota or a Subaru.
I agree at 100%. Yeah, the cost of ownership of those cars is much more predictable because there's the quality of them is great. The parts are accessible. It's less likely for repairs to snowball on those, and they're built well. Compared with, a BMW or a Mercedes, those are going to cost you more money to own. They're also going to be a nicer car, but they definitely cost more to maintain.
Agreed.
And the idea about maintaining a car and having that be easier, maintenance is always easier. So you got a car with a set of bald tires that's just about worn out. You ideally would replace the tires, or other option is you keep driving them and keep driving them until one of those tires blows out, and that adds the added expense of paying the tow truck. And then once you get it towed to the shop, you still have to buy the tires that you had to buy before, but another $100 or so flew out the window on the tow. And so it's always easier, just like going to the dentist, it's easier and less expensive to deal with issues preemptively and on a maintenance purpose than it is to wait until they turn into a larger problem.
Yes, and I know that my dentist, Dr. Eric Jones, who I think just did one of these webinars like last week or 2 weeks ago. Eric, if you're listening, and I know you're not, but maybe you will be tomorrow, we use the dental analogy all the time at the shop because it's so similar. You neglect dental and you're in trouble. And if you neglect car stuff, like car maintenance, you're going to be in trouble. It's just going to cost you more and it's going to hurt more. Just a little different kind of hurt.
Yeah, that's true 100%. You go in for every 6-month cleaning on your teeth, you avoid a deep cleaning that's going to cost you 6 times, 8 times as much money. And you're going to back pay all that maintenance that you skipped out on. Just like with a car, if I ignore my brakes for long enough, they start to squeak, then they start to grind. That grinding, the more loud the noises get, the more parts have to be replaced, the higher the cost goes. And as a mechanic or a professional in this industry, I would much rather tell someone, hey, you need a basic brake job than, hey, this just added in 4 more parts that we have to replace that we wouldn't have otherwise. Because in many cases, that extra money that gets spent on those extra parts could have been better allocated to, say, a new set of tires or a new battery or a cabin air filter that's really dirty. And I like to see people invest their money on things that are going to benefit them, not things that didn't have to get bought in the first place if they would have been paid.
Yeah. Good point. Kimberly has a question, and we're not going to laugh at her. She thinks we might, but she says she has a 99 Mustang that she doesn't drive very much anymore. She had the oil changed almost 2 years ago, but she hasn't even driven 3,000 miles yet, and the oil is still clean looking on the dipstick. Should she have it changed anyway? What do you think, John?
So I think there's a large misconception about the oil change in a situation like that. When you go to Quick Lube, you get an oil change. That's what you're buying. That's what you're getting. And then they drain the oil out and they fill it back up. When you go to a professional shop where you have certified mechanics that really know what they're doing, you're getting a mechanic that has, in many cases, 10 to 20, 30 years of experience. And he's also changing the oil. But what he's also doing is giving that car a physical, test driving it thoroughly, inspecting it on the lift. And in many cases, that's done, depending on the vehicle, for $30 to $110. And the price or the value, I guess I would say, of having that mechanic checking your car to make sure it is safe on those next 100 miles that you do take it out and drive it on a sunny day, is the value is far greater than the cost. So I look at an oil change service as I'm checking over the vehicle and getting peace of mind that it's in good condition. And as a byproduct, I'm also getting new oil and a new filter in the car. So the oil and filter is a given. What I'm expecting out of that oil change, if I'm paying someone, is the thorough inspection to make sure that my car is safe. And even if it hasn't been driven, there are issues like tires will dry rot and start to crack and the rubber wears out. Batteries will start to weaken, seals will dry out and start to leak. And maybe you find out that you have an axle seal leaking that costs a couple $100 to fix right now. Well, if you didn't change the oil on it, you go out and drive it the next 300 miles, that seal is blown, and now you need a new transmission or a differential that costs $3,000 or $4,000 when it could have been identified at that $50 oil change. So I guess that's my opinion on it. It's cheap insurance. It's the same reason that I go to get a haircut. It only costs me $20, but I know I'm not going to look like a goofball any more than I already do and have to. So
where did you get a haircut? There's no hair to be cut.
So this haircut right here, that actually cost me $85 because I had to order a clippers the other day. The only one I could find was $95. So the positive side of it was I got to cut my 3 little boys' hair as well, and so that reduced my cost per time to about $21.50 or so. But it wasn't worth it in the end. I'll tell you that. I should have let it go.
Well, I hear that if you move to Costa Rica, your hair grows at twice the rate, and that's why Shields' hair got so long being in Costa Rica. And I'm just poking fun at him because I know he's muted and he can't respond.
I just unmuted myself. There's only one hairstyle, which is ultra short. So I'm either going to get the buzz cut or just let it go. And I'm about ready for the buzz cut now.
I'll mail you my clippers FedEx overnight. I've reduced the cost per use of $18, so you can Venmo that over.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll offer any good mechanic a free trip here to come down and fix my car after all the experiences I've had trying to deal with car repair. When you're talking about DIY car repair, this is the land.
Yeah.
So
I've been.
Let me tell you about a friend of mine. His name is Zach in Ashland, Oregon, and he'll get in the middle of that and save the day for you. Great guy, one of the best shops in town. I've known him for a long time, and he'll be in your garage by tomorrow.
Free one-way ticket, Zach. You can figure out why there's zip ties holding my radiator on my car.
Are they DOT approved zip ties?
I do not think they would hold up at 75 miles an hour.
I don't know if Costa Rica has a Department of Transportation.
No, they do. I actually have a driver's license.
So Kimberly,
Northwest Airlines used to have 500-mile-an-hour tape. I could probably find some of that up here in Minneapolis and ship it down.
Oh, it works for anything. I could use that.
Don't let that leak out. That'll be the new zip tie, official zip tie of Costa Rica.
All right.
So back, Kimberly, your question is a really good question. And John's answer, to sum it up really quickly, is that though your oil might be clean and not need to be changed, that car should probably be looked over because it's been sitting around, and sitting around for cars is not good. It's like our bodies. If we laid on the couch all day, every day for 2 years, we'd be in rough shape. And when your car sits around, it's actually really hard on a lot of seals that require lubrication for longevity. And when there's not fluid, whether it's oil or coolant, if that fluid is not circulating and being pushed through and around some of these rubber seals, the seals dry out. And so my answer and John's answer to you would be, I would bring it in just for an oil change anyway. It's cheap insurance for the amount of peace of mind that you're going to get. And I just think I think John's spot on that response. And so hopefully you get that thing in and just get it looked at. And then the peace of mind really is that, if you need to jump in that car for any type of situation and go, you can go, and it's going to be it's going to be ready, going to get you where you need to go. So yeah, that's
If not, we're seeing a lot of cars coming in that have been sitting. People have been not driving for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. A lot of people are working at home. They're getting groceries delivered from different companies, and we're having more cars towed into the shop than usual, and some of them even have batteries that are only a year old that should still be starting the car in this weather. So even if you're not out driving around in your car, maybe you're working from home, it's definitely worth starting your car. And if nothing else, spin it around the block, take it out 5-10 miles, and just put some miles on it to make sure that the brake rotors don't rust up, and that the battery stays charged. You'll definitely be happy when you don't have those issues when you start driving again.
Yeah, good advice. Hey, Shields, I see you asked a question here. I know about the radiator being zip tied to the body of the car. That's definitely not cool, not safe. And you're wondering about tire rotation. The 2 back tires are toast. The front tires are 50% and have 2 new tires. Should I put the new tires on the back or the front? Here's the answer to that. And John, you might differ, but when I went to college at RCC, there at some point in time, the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration changed their ruling on where you put the good tires. And so the good tires should actually go on the back, because if you have a blowout, you want the blowout to happen on a tire that you can steer. You don't want the blowout to happen on a tire you can't steer. So if the blowout happens on the front left tire, that's going to steer you right into oncoming traffic, and you want to be able to jerk your wheel to the right to go into the ditch instead of going into oncoming traffic. And so you should put your good tires on the back and have your crappy tires on the front, but you really should just get 4 new tires. Tires, if God forbid anything were to ever happen to anybody in your family because of crappy tires on your car, you'd never forgive yourself. And I'm just telling you, and that's the blunt truth. You would just think, God, if I would have just put 4 tires on my car, and believe it or not, people actually die because of tire blowouts, and it's just not worth it. So get 4 tires for Pete's sake. Get 4 tires for John's sake, for Shield's sake. Do it.
Although from the sounds of this car in Costa Rica with the radiator hanging out the bottom, the correct answer of where to put the new tires might be anywhere on the car, because it's going to be better than it was before. So yeah, I agree with 100%, Zach. Yeah, like I said earlier, you got 4 things keeping you attached to the ground while you're flying 70 miles an hour across it. You're never going to look back and say, I wish I didn't spend that $400, $500, $600, $700 to keep that safe. When you get we get a lot of snow here. The weather gets horrible And you're never going to look back on that morning when it's 10 degrees below zero in a blizzard and say, I wish I had worse traction right now. So it's a bit of a stinger to buy tires because your old ones still rolled down the road, but it's a purchase that you don't ever regret buying because it really does make the car a lot safer.
Yeah, and I should say that if you're going to buy tires, you should always get your car aligned, or at least have the alignment checked. At Ashland Automotive, we sell tires and we do alignments. And if you buy tires and your car is out of alignment, you run the risk of ruining your new tires almost right away. I mean, you can ruin a set of tires in 50 miles driving if you're way out of alignment. So it's kind of bread and butter. You gotta have the both together. You can't just do one without the other.
Well, yeah, if you spend, $800, sometimes $1,200 on a big set of truck tires, to have those wear out prematurely, because we saved $100, $120 on an alignment, whatever it is, $200. I don't know what the market is out there, but you're never going to look back and say, I'm glad I saved that $100 or $200 and burned up a set of tires on the front of my car for $400 or $500. So that's really worth it, and it does make it a lot safer for sure.
You talk about the sting. The sting is bad when you ruin a set of tires. It hurts.
Knowing that it was your own fault for making that decision. I've done that before, and it's not a good feeling. It's worth doing the job the right way the first time.
It's much more fun to ruin a set of tires by doing burnouts in the parking lot at Walmart, or driving like a race car driver. That's way more fun than ruining a set of tires driving to the grocery store and not even knowing that you're ruining your tires because the alignment is so far off. I don't know. Do we have to go now, Shields? John and I like to hang out and do this all the time anyway. So, but we can save a little bit for next time, I guess.
It's up to you guys. Just whatever you guys are for.
Well, I think this is a good start, and we'll wrap it up because we planned on 45 minutes. But we're going to do this next.
You do like a shout out for your businesses and where you guys are located so people can follow along more as we do the next broadcast.
Do it, John.
Yep. My name is John again, and we have two repair shops, one in South Minneapolis, Minnesota called Action Auto, and another one in Lakeville, Minnesota called Hometown Auto. So been in this business for a long time, and I appreciate your time, and I hope we provided, if not some decent advice, some crappy comedy for you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I'm Zach Edwards from Ashland Automotive here on Clover Lane in Ashland, right off exit 14. And I know that we provided some crappy comedy for you guys, and probably some okay advice as well. So thanks, Shields, for having us. And we'll look forward to doing this at least one more time. Thanks, John.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right. See ya.